Welcome back to our channel where we provide updates and undisclosed narratives on Catherine, Princess of Wales and her royal family. We provide you with the exciting news, place in shock, Catherine in tears, Camilla confrontation over Diana's memory. An insider source said that amid the uproar over the new tiara rule for women in the royal family, Camilla is apparently wanting to wear Princess Diana's most historic tiara. The insider said that this caused a lot of stress among the ladies in the royal family. The fight between Princess Catherine and Camilla became so bad that Princess Catherine cried as Queen Camilla allegedly tore up Diana's sacred wedding gown. A quiet fear has settled over Kensington Palace because an unimaginable act of degradation is said to have happened within its most protected walls. Queen Camilla is said to have methodically destroyed Princess Diana's holy wedding dress, which is the most famous piece of clothing from the 20th century. This has sent shockwaves through the royal household. As the news spread through the palace's inner halls, gasps went to astonishment and eventually to deep shock. Behind closed doors, aides whispered in fear of a jealousy that had been building for a long time and had now become merciless. They spoke about a queen consort who could no longer stand living in the shadow of the lady the world would never forget. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, made the terrible discovery. When she entered the climate-controlled vault where the gown was kept, she was not greeted with the beautiful white silk confection she had come to love. Instead, she saw a terrible sight of destruction. The garment was in pieces with a pile of ripped silk, cut lace, and scattered pearls. Her anguish was so strong and real that it poured over. Witnesses said they heard a stifled scream echoing in the clean room. The princess is said to have cried, "This was hers!" the last piece of her, as she fell next to the broken artifact that had once represented the dreams of a country. Now, as the royal family is getting ready for an unparalleled internal crisis, Britain is forced to wonder, was this an act of finality, a last-ditch effort to get rid of Diana's ghost once and for all? Or is this the start of a far worse, deeper royal war? The dress of the century, a silk symbol. On the hot morning of July 29, 1981, the streets of London were packed with people and the excitement in the air was almost palpable. Millions of people, their faces bright with excitement, lined the path of the parade. Some people had camped out on the chilly sidewalk all night holding Union Jacks and thermoses simply to get a quick look at a young lady who was about to become a princess. The happy sound of church bells and the shouting of the throng filled the air. Television cameras were ready to show the occasion to the globe from every rooftop and balcony that was accessible. When the glass carriage with Lady Diana Spencer eventually got to St. Paul's Cathedral, everyone cheered. But when she went out, the uproar immediately turned into a quiet, respectful hush. Everyone looked at her with wide eyes as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing. The outfit was the problem. The world has never seen a wedding dress like Diana's. The ivory silk taffeta was a beautiful piece of work. The fabric was silky and shone in the summer sun. The sleeves were huge and blew out at the shoulder in a cloud of fabric that ended in a beautiful lace cuff. The neckline, which had a soft scoop, was surrounded with ancient Carrick-Macross lace that had originally belonged to Queen Mary. This lace represented a fragile connection to royal history. The bodice and skirt were carefully embroidered by hand with thousands of tiny mother-of-pearl sequins and more than 10,000 pearls. Every time she made a step, the light caught them. Then there was the train. It was an amazing 25 feet long and flowed behind her like a beautiful river of silk. Her youthful bridesmaids carried it down the stairs of the church in a stunning cascade. People gasped all along the way. Some people put their palms over their mouths in shock. The dress wasn't simply clothes, it was a fantasy become real. David and Elizabeth Emanuel, who were then married, labored in complete secrecy for months to develop it. Their goal was to turn the timid nursery school aide into a fairy tale princess, and they did it in a way that no one could have imagined. Not one drawing or piece of fabric had been permitted to leave their workshop. Reports say they even dumped fake drawings into their trash cans to throw off the reporters. They knew the world was waiting, and they were set on making the revelation one that people would never forget. That day, when Diana went slowly down the aisle with her head down shyly behind her huge, sparkling veil, the dress seemed to say everything for her. It was about a young lady who was picked for an amazing future. It was delicate and lovely, but it was also strong since it was so big. This dress said, "This is history," and it got people's attention. About 750 million people across the world watched the wedding on TV. Families got together in their living rooms all throughout the world, from London to Los Angeles. People swarmed around store windows showing the program in busy metropolitan centers and quiet villages. For a short, glorious time, everyone on the globe saw the same picture: Diana in white silk, shining, striding into her destiny. The dress won hearts because it was more than just a piece of clothing. It was a strong symbol. For a lot of people, it stood for innocence, optimism, and the start of a new, more contemporary period for the royal family. It was like something out of a storybook, an average girl marrying a prince and entering a world of crowns and castles. Every little thing has a purpose. The old lace made Diana feel like she was part of royal weddings from the past. The cloth came from Britain's oldest silk farm, which was an homage to heritage and national pride. And there was a little 18-karat gold horseshoe studded with diamonds sewn into the label for good luck. The Emanuels intended to offer her something special, a hidden blessing sewn into the very fabric of her fate. The outfit was more than just a public statement for Diana. She had said that she was quite apprehensive, even scared, on the day of her wedding. But when she put on that dress with its full length and shiny train, she felt like a new person. It gave her strength, like putting on a type of regal armor made of silk and lace. People spoke about how the dress appeared to fill the huge area as she stood next to Prince Charles at the altar. The ceilings of St. Paul's Cathedral are quite high, yet the dress didn't appear little inside. It didn't go up. Instead, it stretched out and took over the space, filling everything with its presence. The cloth seemed to carry Diana's essence, letting everyone know that she was more than simply a bride. People would remember her, and she was remembered. The following day, her photo was on the top page of newspapers all across the globe. It was called "The Dress of the Century" in the news. Fashion experts applauded how romantic and daring it was. Brides-to-be wanted to emulate it, and small girls drew pictures of it in their notebooks. Diana had not just donned a wedding dress, she had changed the meaning of a wedding dress. The dress in the aftermath, a sacred relic. When Diana died in 1997, the world was flooded with sadness. But when the flowers outside Kensington Palace began to wilt, the royal family couldn't help but wonder what would happen to her most prized possessions. Many of Diana's famous dresses were sold at auction to raise money for the charities she cared about, bringing in millions of dollars. But her clothing for the wedding was different. It wasn't anything that could be sold or even shown off. For her boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, it was more than just history. It was a real part of their mother's soul. Experts in textile restoration were given the garment. They looked at each gem and each thread of lace to make sure that time couldn't take away its beauty. After that, everything was carefully packaged, put in a custom-made, climate-controlled container, and kept in a safe, secret place. For years, it sat there like a crown gem protected from light, air, and dust. It was more mysterious to the public since it was missing. It turned into a tale and a sacred artifact. But the outfit meant a lot to William and Harry. William was 15, and Harry was just 12 when their mother died. Grief had taken away the sound of her voice and the feel of her embraces, but the gown remained a quiet, steadfast keeper of memories. Palace personnel who knew where it was spoke about the prince's visits with respectful reverence. People stated that William would stand in front of the preservation box for a long time, his hands behind his back and his eyes on the preserved folds of cloth. Harry, who was frequently more restless, would walk about it, his face tense, as if he were looking for a way to connect with the mother he could no longer touch. One assistant said in a whisper, "It was like Diana was still in there." The outfit held her presence. The dress took on a new significance when Catherine Middleton came into William's life. She had never met Diana, but Diana's shadow was always with her. People were comparing their looks, their smiles, and how kind they seemed to be. Catherine knew that the dress was more than simply a sign of a royal wedding. It was also a connection to the lady who had reared the man she loved and a bridge between the past and the present. She is said to have stood in wonder and quiet the first time she saw it with tears in her eyes. She put her palm lightly on the plastic case, as if she were reaching out to Diana herself. She said softly, "It's more than beautiful. It's holy." She told her friend that she sometimes sensed Diana's presence most strongly around the dress. She told a close friend once, "It's like she's here watching over us." Catherine learned about the weight of history and the duties of her royal duty from the clothing, but it was also painful, since the dress was a symbol of all that was lost, not simply a fairy tale beginning. The clothing was formally given to the princes when they turned 18. It was a big job, yet they were both responsible for protecting it. They were the only ones who could determine when and how the world might see it again. The Forbidden Vault and the Act That Shouldn't Happen. There is a room deep within the palace that few people have ever been in. Staff members call it the Vault, and it's a simple, chilly, and silent place that is quite secure. This is where Diana's wedding dress was. Something strange happened on a peaceful day. Queen Camilla walked into the safe wing with a blank look on her face. Her shoes clicked sharply and on purpose on the glossy floorboards. An attendant came behind them holding a tiny folder. A guard at the security desk held out a piece of paper that said, "Temporary Access Artifact Audit." After a short pause, the guard let them in. The hallway beyond was bleak and narrow, and the air became colder with each step. There was a strong door waiting at the end of the tunnel. The vault opened with a gentle hiss, letting out a breath of cold, clean air. There were labeled archive bins on shelves all around the room. The one that mattered was in the middle. Its shiny brass plate had the words, "Diana, Princess of Wales, Wedding Gown, 1981, written on it. Camilla came to a halt. Her reflection flickered a little on the surface of the container. She didn't move for a long time. In the quiet of the room, the weight of history, every comparison, every stinging headline, and every word she had heard for decades seemed to crush down on her. "This won't take long," she remarked, in a voice that was almost a whisper. The clack of her gloved fingers opening the latches seemed too loud in the quiet. The lid came off. White layers of acid-free tissue paper shone. She delicately pulled them back to see the dress. The pearls sparkled, the white silk appeared to shine, and the lace edges were as fragile as ice. She held her breath and looked. She got a pair of sharp, delicate scissors from a conservator's kit on a shelf nearby. The tiny blades shone. The first cut was modest, a near-silent snip that disrupted the peace in the room. One pearl with its thread cut slid free and rolled across the table, tapping once before coming to rest on her glove. Camilla kept going. Another cut. Another pearl. The sound was soft, but never stopped, like silk giving way with every frigid push of the blade. The dress that used to rule a church was slowly, carefully being taken apart. "This dress," she said in a low, tight voice, "has ruled every room for 40 years. Her fingers moved again, cutting through the lace of a puffed sleeve. "It won't control me." The aide moved about nervously. "Ma'am, maybe." "No," she said, her voice like steel. "We've waited long enough." She pushed harder with her scissors, cutting right through a seam in the bodice. The fabric ripped with a sound that was too harsh and forceful for anything so fragile. The dress fell apart bit by bit. The beautiful 25-foot train turned into a mess of ripped shreds on the floor. The famous sleeves fell into piles that had no form. The ancient lace, which was a treasured piece of royal history, sagged in her palm since it was cut off from the neckline. She stopped and looked at the pieces. She said to the ruins, "You were just a dress." "But they treated you like a saint." She reached inside the torn lining and felt something little and rough. She got it out. The little gold horseshoe, which was a hidden sign of good luck, shone in her hand. She looked at it for a bit before putting it down on the table. "Luck always runs out," she added. She took one final long look at the ruined silk and pearls before turning around and leaving the vault. The attendant stayed behind, stuck in place, looking at what was left. The clothing was no longer there. There were just pieces left, a wound formed of cloth that glowed faintly in the chilly subterranean light. A queen's anger, a princess's grief. The air in the palace was heavy with unsaid anxiety the next morning. An attendant came into Catherine's private study with a pale face. He had trouble finding the right words, and his voice shook as he said that something had happened in the vault. Catherine's blood froze. She got up from her chair and left the room without saying a word. Her footsteps echoed down the long hallways. She ran faster, nearly sprinting since her mind wouldn't let her see what was coming. She pulled the vault door open, and her breath was held in a strangled gasp. The dress wasn't simply ruined, it was destroyed. The ivory silk was ripped into strips. Someone had cut the train in half. There were pearls all over the floor like small tears that had spilled. Catherine lurched forward and her palm flew to her mouth as a rush of sadness and nausea hit her. She fell to her knees next to the table, shaking all over. This was the dress she loved, the one that belonged to William and Harry, and the one that belonged to Diana. Gone. As she stretched out with a shaking hand to touch the dead cloth, tears flowed down her cheeks. She picked up a torn piece of silk and held it to her chest, as if her hug might somehow fix what was broken. This was hers. The last piece of her. She screamed, her voice piercing the quiet. The only sound in the room was her crying. She leaned down farther, and her tears fell on the pieces of silk. She picked up one loose pearl and held it tightly in her hand. The anguish in her heart was acute and deep. But behind the sadness, another feeling started to grow, a cold, unambiguous rage. She rose up carefully, straightening her back. Her eyes were still moist with tears, but now they were full of resolve. She moved quickly and with purpose after that. She went straight to the drawing room where she knew Camilla would be. She came in without being told. Camilla was sitting near the window with a cup of tea next to her. She glanced up and her face was serene. "How could you?" Catherine's voice was a rough whisper full of rage and despair. It was hers. It was her memory. Slowly, Camilla put her cup down. "It was a dress," she said in a calm, quiet voice. "Thread and cloth. It had too much strength. It was her presence. Catherine shot back, moving closer. For William, for Harry, for our kids. You broke it because you couldn't stand her shadow. At this point, Camilla finally lost her cool. That shadow has been in this palace longer than I have, she yelled back, her voice becoming louder. I won't spend the rest of my life bowing to a ghost in a box. Catherine responded. You can't erase her, her voice quivering but resolute. Cutting that dress won't get her out of our life. She will always be loved, remembered, and honored here. And you can never take it away. She put the piece of silk she had brought from the vault on the table between them. The ripped cloth was an allegation in and of itself. Catherine's voice dropped to a near whisper as she stated, This is what you've left us. Pieces. But don't think of this as a win. She didn't say anything else and exited the room with her head held high. Camilla stayed alone and looked at the piece of silk. The sky opened up outside and a chilly rain started to pour on the windows of the palace. The prince's pain and a promise for the future. William and Harry heard the news separately in quiet, deliberate tones. For William, the revelation was like an explosion within. Catherine found him and only put 3 little pearls and a golden horseshoe in his hand. He got it right away. They all headed to the vault. William gazed over the debris of his mother's dress, his face a stone wall. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. His jaw muscle tensed and a cold, controlled rage filled his gaze. He walked around the table, moving slowly and quietly. His stillness was louder than any shout. He picked up a piece of the torn bodice which felt soft and dead in his hands, and then he let it fall. His directions were quite clear, but not loud. It was important to gather and save every piece, pearl, and thread precisely as they were. The box would be closed again, but this time it would be a tomb for a memory, not clothing. For Harry, who lived thousands of miles away, the news was like a punch in the gut, reviving a hurt that had never really healed. The robe was one of the few physical things that he and his brother still had in common with their mother. It was a treasured piece from a period before their world fell apart. It seemed like a deep and personal betrayal when it was violently destroyed, like another loss on top of the first. Sources claim he was very sad and angry at the institution he thought had failed to safeguard his mother's memory once again. Later that night, William and Catherine sat in their own rooms without saying a word. The little gold horseshoe was on the table between them. Finally, William replied, "We can't bring it back." His voice raspy with grief. He put his hand on top of hers. "But we can make sure she is never ever gone." They made a promise without saying a word. Diana's legacy would no longer be kept in a vault where it was safe from thieves. It would be real. From that day on, the Prince and Princess of Wales had a new purpose in life. Catherine put all of her attention into her charity work, which was focused on mental health and early childhood development. These were subjects that Diana cared about as well. She spoke with families crouched down to talk to kids and gave off a warmth that the public found very familiar. William, who was standing next to her, spoke more loudly than ever about how his mother had affected him, turning his silent anger into action. They worked together to make sure that Diana's name was not just a footnote in history, but a live, breathing force for good. They educated their kids, George, Charlotte, and Louis, not only about a grandma in pictures, but also about a lady who was very brave, kind, and loving. The clothing of the century is gone, broken up into pieces, and put in a box. But amid its destruction, something new was made, a strong, unbreakable will to keep the memory of the people's princess alive. The dress may be gone, but the promise to respect Diana's memory will never be broken. Thank you for watching the video. Please let us know your thoughts and goodbye for now.